James, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. I thought you might have got bored. Like you thought, James, we've had two other people the past two episodes, and we just don't want you back anymore as a co-host. I thought I was going to get punted there.
Do you know, the variety is the spice of life, but familiarity is rather nice. And isn't it lovely that we are actually in the same building today?
We're socially distanced, as you can see.
Different
So we'll,
corridors.
we'll find out where I've got my hand gel at the ready, my face mask.
How cool is this? It's lovely to be back in a studio, back in the real world. Hey,
Yeah, good.
fantastic.
So how's your week been
Right.
going then, Maria?
My week is good. My week is good. Thank you very much indeed. It's weird because we're sort of coming up to various anniversaries now, with pandemic anniversaries. So that's been a bit odd. And we're sort of remembering, oh, that's when all that lot cancelled, and that's when all that lot postponed, and that's when we realised this, and it's like unraveling, year-end accounts, and you're seeing that things were postponed and changed and cancelled, and it's like, oh. So that's all joyful. What about you?
Yeah, very, very good. It's things you're starting to see these little green shoots coming now, and it's nice seeing. As much as I love doing virtual and I love doing virtual keynotes, virtual MC things, it's just quite nice getting back out on the road again. So seeing those dates come in for the second half of this year, and actually just going on to like Skyscanner and Google Flights and looking at flights again, it actually fills you with a bit of confidence again.
Fingers crossed. Fingers
Fingers
crossed.
crossed.
Okay. So listen, the show today is all about reinvention. We have a theme. I quite like having a theme, actually. All about reinvention. Tell us what we've got in terms of exciting guests.
Well, we have a phenomenal guest today. Someone actually, I told my mother's never excited about any guests that we get on the show for some reason. I told her about.
Thanks, Mum.
Thanks, Mom. I told her about the guest that we were having this week, and she goes, "Oh, I'm going to watch." So for the first time ever. So our guest today is Gerald Ratner. Gerald Ratner is an entrepreneur, business speaker, and really a British household name. He took over his family's jewelry business in 1984, which at the time had 130 stores. By 1990, it had 2,500 stores, 25,000 employees, and annual sales of £1.2 billion. Unfortunately, he's gone down in history when a corporate speaking engagement, he described a sherry decanter, which is one of Ratner's company's products, as total CRAB. The resulting fallout caused him to lose his job. Reduced to virtually nothing and shunned by banks and prospective employers, he eventually picked himself up and clawed his way back. Today, Gerald Ratner is very much in demand as a business speaker and has also built an American business from scratch, building it to over 1,000 shops in the USA, becoming actually one of the few UK retailers that actually succeed on the other side of the pond. He now runs one of the UK's largest online jewellery businesses, Gerald Online. It's our great pleasure to have Gerald Ratner with us today. So welcome, Gerald.
Thank you.
I'm going to try and make you bigger. I see, it always goes wrong for me. There you go.
So, Gerald, I have to ask you. So, you in the UK, many people know because of what happened with the Ratners and that famous speech that you gave. But I think almost like a more interesting, because our topic this week is reinvention, is kind of what you did next, and you kind of moved also into the US market a lot. So, do you get a sense that there's this idea of business failure? Does it feel different in the US as opposed to the UK? And is the UK maybe getting any better about understanding risk and failure?
Well, it's a very good question. And yes, I mean, I believe what was said about me in the press, that I was unemployable. I was written off. Yes, I did make the biggest corporate gaffe of all time, but nevertheless, I had built the world's largest jewelry business, and we were very, very successful before the speech. In fact, it's worth remembering, we'd announced £125 million profit the day before, and we were going for 200 million profit. And that's 30 years ago, which is probably over £1 billion. There's not any retailer, I don't think, making that sort of money today. So just because I did make a mistake, and I don't blame anybody but myself for it, didn't mean that I was the biggest poster boy for failure, which I have become over the last 30 years, even though I've since built two successful businesses. But I accept that, and I've used it to my advantage to a certain degree. But yeah, I mean, I was totally written on. There was no way I was going to get a job. and it was even difficult to raise money. Whereas in America, they use it as a badge of honor. You know, if you've been in chapter 11 or you've gone bust and you start up again, they think it's terrific that you've bounced back. But here you are written off. And that, I do think it's a shame that we have that stigma, because business is all about taking risks. And, you know, the most successful business people are the people that have taken the biggest risks.
Absolutely, absolutely right. And you actually have become a case study, haven't you, in university? So although it happened in 1991, and so those of us who are a little bit older, at your age, you know, we remember, and we remember Ratner's as it was. The younger generation also know about it because they're studying you. Isn't that amazing?
Yes. Yesterday, I did a speech for Essex University, where I'm part of their curriculum for business studies. So they were, you know, inviting me to talk about my career and everything like that. So even though, you know, I lost all that money, £500 million actually, by making that speech, I'm slowly, over the last 30 years, been making it back by doing speeches. It's been a long road back, but there you go. Everything that comes around goes around.
So on that, so getting in that level of public renown for doing something, I'm wondering, like, when people come up to you at events afterwards, because I'm guessing when you go and you speak at these events, you do it. You talk about maybe in a more playful way through benefit of experience. It's not so recent now, so I'd love to know what kind of tone you take when you go and give these speeches.
Well, you know, it's no good getting up there. You know, everyone's had a few drinks at the Grosvenor House or whatever, Piccadilly, Manchester, and getting up there and saying, "Oh, I've got the short straw. I'm bitter. I've been hard done by. The press are diabolical and all that, you know, and I lost everything and I shouldn't have done that." I mean, I don't think that would go down very well. So instead, you know, I blame myself completely, make jokes about it, read out the top 50 mistakes of all time, or some of the highlights, where I come out number one. I even beat the guy that sold his 10% stake in Apple for $800 in 1976. That cost £1.5 billion or dollars. So, yeah, and you know, I just make fun of myself, and people like it because they actually don't want to hear somebody stand up, boast about all their successes one after the other, all their achievements. I mean, that makes actually quite a boring, dull speech. So they do find it funny, but there is a serious message there. And I get people coming up to me at the end of the speech saying, you know, my bank foreclosed on me today. I went through a very difficult thing. You've really cheered me up. Because it's no good me just doing a speech saying about losing it. I do talk about how I made it all, a lot of it back. Nobody wants to listen to a complete klutz. So, you know, I do talk about my failures and successes, and they come up to me and say, you know, you've really cheered me up today, because, you know, I felt I'm in a very difficult place at the moment. And if you can come back, then I can come back. And, you know, it cheers them up. So I've never had one bad word said to me. And I've been doing these speeches for 15 years. I've had nothing but compliments and nice things said. But every day on Twitter, I get at least half a dozen people saying, you know, something really unpleasant. So, but when they meet me, it is slightly different, a lot different.
You mentioned banks there as well. I am wondering, like, how for your future, the business after that. So I'm guessing it would be those conversations you would had with banks after that would have been pretty difficult for starting new businesses. So how because you've built all these other businesses now. So how do you raise money after you've been so publicly kind of showing that you've had this kind of business failure? How do you raise money? Where do you go from there?
Well, you know, after I left Ratner's, and I didn't do anything for 7 years, it has to be said, I'd given up and believed everything it said about me. I did start cycling and seeing the benefits of exercise. And I could see that near where I lived, there would be a demand for a health club. I mean, there wasn't one at all. And it was quite an affluent area. So I felt, you know, I could see the benefit of health and fitness. And I've certainly seen this through the pandemic. And I want to go into that business. But of course, I've been wiped out. I lost all my money because the shares had fallen from 4.50 to 2p. and I had debts and stuff like that. But so I went to the bank, and sure enough, when I went to the bank, he said it was a stupid idea, and coming from you, it's doubly stupid. Bugger off or something like that. He didn't even offer me a cup of tea and a biscuit. So I not only couldn't get a job, I couldn't raise any money. But I came up with this ingenious plan of actually selling memberships for this club that didn't exist because I didn't have the money. I had found the site, I put it in solicitors' hands, that cost nothing, and I put an advert in the Henley Standard with an artist's impression of how it's going to look. Now, they always say that you should under-promise and over-deliver. Well, I think I over-promised and under-delivered, because the drawing of this club really looked like the greatest club on earth. Fabulous grounds and swimming pool and bar, even had marble floors, because it was all sort of something I was making up. And on the basis of that advert for a non-existent club, I got 850 people to sign up with their direct debits. And I went back to the bank, and he still said no. He still said no. But I eventually, after going to 12 more banks, and putting these direct debits on the table, saying that they clearly want my club in Henley, I did raise the cash. And he told me that one of those direct debits belonged to his wife. So sometimes you need a bit of luck. And 2.5 years later, I sold it for £4 million. So I felt pretty good about that.
I love that. I think that's so clever, to raise money before you've done it. And I know that a lot of people do that online now when they're creating online and digital products. They'll they'll get the customers first. It's so important to have the customers first, isn't it? I love that way of doing business.
Exactly. I mean, they say 8 out of 10 businesses fail. And, what is the point of throwing a huge amount of money, getting offices, taking on staff, advertising, everything like that, and then you don't know whether it's successful or not. So if you can find a way and I don't mean calling in experts to do surveys and demographics and all that, they can over-analyze something. But if you can find a way whether somebody will buy something and then start the business, that's a great way of doing it, which goes completely the other way around with conventional wisdom.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And of course, you've been speaking for years about, the story, but now you're really focusing on the topic of reinvention, which you've given us the theme for this week, which is lovely. And you've recently written a book. It's not your first book, but as a speaker, Gerald, do you think having a book actually helps you as a speaker and helps you in your speaking business?
Oh, well, I started speaking in 2003, and along the way, I've had a lot of speeches from you, which I'm very grateful for, and you are one of the best speaking agencies that I could ever deal with, definitely in my top 3. Fantastic. And there's no question that when my book came out in 2008, that was my best year ever. It was, and in fact, a lot of places that I went to, they were giving the books out and I was signing the books, and it was just something that really made me topical, which people who put on events like, they don't want to sort of dig somebody up that's been around for years, they haven't heard of at all. Somebody's in the news who's getting a bit of publicity. And my book was actually was serialized in the Sunday Times. And I was a bit worried about this because I thought it would affect sales because people could read it for free in there. But all that promotion was fantastic for me. And it culminated in doing, about 120 speeches that year. In fact, one day in November of that year, which was a bit nerve-wracking, I did 3 speeches, one in London, one in Manchester, and one in Sheffield. And I was mostly terrified about getting to those venues and not letting them down, which I did. But it was terrifying. I'll never do that again. I'll never take on 3 in one day. But it was all because of the fact that I'd written a book. So
hopefully it will have the same effect this time. And your book is really, I've actually got it. It's my tool of the week this week. So you're going to see it twice this week. But it's a really nice read. And it's very much your style. And it's with Rob Moore, who's a fellow entrepreneur.
Rob Moore is brilliant. And he's given me lots of speeches as well. And he's written 17 books, business books. But he told me you don't make any money out of the books. So I said, great. Why did I bother? But he says it's the spin-off from the book writing. is enormous. You get mentoring and you get speeches and you get podcasts, and it's true. You know, you wouldn't have asked me today if I hadn't written the book. So you cannot sit on your backside and expect people to invite you to do anything unless you reciprocate.
I would actually, Gerald. Yeah. I would.
Gerald, as I'm thinking about this, as you're kind of talking and you're kind of telling your story, you know, the pandemic we're kind of still going through just now. So many businesses have unfortunately gone out of business, especially in retail as well. And we've seen huge numbers. And I think we're going to see, certainly in the UK, once the furlough starts to unwind, we're going to see a lot more probably. So I would imagine your topic, you are almost a post-pandemic speaker, because your topic, I think, will become even more relevant in the coming months, as many of these business owners have to do exactly what you did back then, kind of picking yourself up again, kind of, okay, reinvent, what's next? So who knows, maybe 2022 could be your best year ever. Maybe we can get over that 120 speeches mark.
Beat my record, yeah. Well, you know, I love speaking. I absolutely love it. And unless, this is what this book is all about, unless you love your job, or you love what you're doing, regardless of whether you're successful or not, you're not going to be very good at it. I know Maria loves her job, and that's why she's at the top of her game. It's really a question of, if you're not happy, life is too short, don't stay where put. A lot of people are terrified about reinventing themselves, and it is a risk. But every successful person that I've ever met in business has taken a risk. You know, you have to take risks. We're not in the public sector, however wonderful the police are and the nurses are. It's a different thing from being in the private sector, where you have to take risks to go forward, and reinventing yourself, moving your career to a different path is a huge risk.
We've got a couple of comments, actually. Yeah. So we've got Angela Rigby says, brilliant, the power of positive thinking and materialization. Fantastic. And Mary, great. Well done. Thank you very much, Mary. We had a couple of problems there broadcasting to LinkedIn, but it looks like we're back on. You see, in the background, I'm watching all this happening as you guys are delivering your excellent content. Control freak. Control freak. Brilliant.
Well, the world we live in, it's terrifying, things freezing the whole time and going wrong.
But now you can do 3 speeches in one day very easily, because you don't actually have to, you could just have to travel, you know, in between sort of the kitchen to get yourself another cup of tea in the bar to refresh or change your shirt or whatever. You can do it so easily virtually. Are you enjoying the virtual speaking?
No, there's an honest answer for you. Now, I shouldn't say that as a typical Gerald answer, because I know I won't get bloody asked, because I just said you have to love what you're doing. I do. No, sorry. Can I scrub that and say yes?
No, we're live.
Yeah, I realise that. What I meant to say was no, not as much. I love going out, meeting people, chatting, having the dinner before, or talking to them in the foyer of the conference hall. And I use a lot of humour in my speeches that don't work as well, I believe, because it's all to do with the audience. And on Zoom, you don't get the audience laughter. They muted themselves or whatever. So my speeches are very different, more serious than they are in real life. So when I say no, I love the fact that you've asked me to do this, and it's certainly, I'm a lot happier working and doing this sort of thing than rather than sitting down watching Netflix or something. So yes, the answer is yeah. It's the best game in town for me at the moment.
Well, Gerald, thank you so much for coming on and sharing today. Where's the best places if people want to learn more about you, obviously about the book and the other projects you've got going on, you're speaking? Where's the best place for them to go and learn about that?
If you just Google me and go to my website, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Facebook. So I'm been prolific posts on that. I love social media, and I'm always posting stuff. And some of it is about my dog, which is not very interesting to some people, but a lot of it is to do with my career.
As you're
I
saying,
like the dog posts. I like the dog posts.
Everyone does. You know, when I post about the dog, he gets about 200 hits, and when I post about myself, I get about 20.
Yeah, no disrespect, but the dog's better looking.
Yeah, the dog's fabulous looking. He's the most
Always.
beautiful looking dog. He's gorgeous.
Gerald, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, and best of luck with the book and the reinvention.
Thank
Take
you
care.
very much. Love to see you. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, hang on a minute. Why are you bigger than me? And you're on my side.
There we go. So,
what fun.
Do you know what? I mean, I haven't really met Gerald before, but I would imagine he would be an amazing after dinner speaker. I'm thinking like the types of events I would love to see him at. Those kind of entrepreneur association kind of conferences, business conferences. He would be fantastic because I think so many entrepreneurs and business owners would immediately empathize and feel what he feels, because we've all kind of had to go through something. Maybe we haven't lost £1 billion, but you know, we've gone on those similar journeys.
So many have been through it in the last year. So many. It's incredible. So this is quite timely, this message to reinvent yourself. Anyway, James, who is our sponsor?
Well, our sponsor for all the series here at This Week in Events is London Speaker Bureau. So we'd like to take a moment to thank the lovely folks at London Speaker Bureau. London Speaker Bureau is a global resource for corporations and governments for keynote speakers, executive learning masterclasses, and boardroom advisors. They represent some of the most influential business leaders and politicians in the world. So find help in choosing a speaker for your next event by going to londonspeakerbureau.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So I want to stay on the theme of, I'll put my teeth back in, the theme of reinvention, because I don't know if everybody knows this, but you reinvented yourself not that long ago. Your background is in music. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you reinvented yourself into a speaker, and tell us about that journey and what you took from the music world that has worked in the speaking world.
Yeah, so I went through, I started off in the music industry. So I started off really promoting gigs, concerts, and then managing artists, and then did that for a number of years, and then kind of having an agency as well for artists, and then record labels and music publishing, and kind of went on and moved to California, got involved in online education. So through that, there's just been this kind of constant reinvention, and really 2017 or 2018 was really the first year I started getting involved being a professional speaker. This is the main thing that I do. So one of the interesting, I think from the outside, it might look like total chaos. there's no red threads going through this, but there is. And I think it's, for me, I've always looked at my careers and those kind of reinventions from a values standpoint. So my highest values are learning. So always wanting to learn new things. So I find that when I feel like I'm getting bored in an area, I feel that's the time for me to reinvent myself. I was just thinking that we were doing this interview today, there was that wonderful book I read as a kid, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks, one of the amazing things in that book is he talks about how sometimes our lives, they're like these chapters in a film, like scenes in a movie. And you can only really make sense of what the whole story arc is when you get to the very end of the movie and you look back. So he said the main thing to focus on is ensuring that each scene has an integrity. It works. And I've always felt that, and my grandfather, I remember telling me this as well. He said, if you're going to do it, go all in. Go for it. Don't half-ass it, really. And so I feel like in all those different little chapters, those little reinventions, I've kind of gone all in. And they've made sense at that time. There's a thread which is like freedom and adventure and travel and creativity. But I'll probably only really make sense of it right at the end. So that's my take on this. But from the outsider's view, it might look a little bit mad doing these different things. What about you?
No, well, I'm very impressed with what you've done very quickly, and it's a shame that COVID has sort of interrupted your travel, because I know you love to travel, although it hasn't interrupted your work, because you've embraced virtual. In fact, you are one of the techiest people I know. I have all the gear, no idea. You have all the gear, know how to use it, which is really cool. So yeah, so brilliant. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, so I was going. So that's my take. So I think from the outsider's view, they may look at you and think this person's all over the place. They've gone from this thing to this thing. But for me, there's a truth there. There is a red thread that kind of goes through that. So, but with your side, you're actually interesting because you're just about. You're kind of in the kind of half stages, 1 foot in, 1 foot into the next place of a reinvention.
Hokey cokey.
Yeah,
hokey cokey. I'm doing the hokey cokey. I'm shaking all about.
Where are you coming from and where are you going to?
Yeah. So yes, it's interesting. It's wonderful. I'm calling it a pirouette as opposed to a pivot. You see, because I think it's more elegant. So where am I coming from and going to? So as Gerald was saying, I've been working in and running international speaker bureaus for 23 years. Wow. Do you believe that?
Wow.
I know. And I didn't start young. I am quite ancient. I'm pickled. It's been amazing. But we're pirouetting and working. So we've been working with corporate clients for all those years. We're working with speakers. So we're moving to work with speakers much more. We found that during COVID, during last year, many speakers were sort of floundering about, how do I make myself relevant? How do I move to virtual? What's happening next? Can you support me? And many panicked. And we thought, well, actually, we can help. So half of my team and I have ended up working very much with speakers. And we got so much joy and satisfaction and pleasure and results that it's actually so thrilling that we've moved in that direction. And it is interesting what you were saying, that you need a challenge. And I've always challenged myself. Every year in the bureau for me has been a different year. We've never done the same thing every year twice. We've always pushed the envelope. We've always tried to be better. We've always strived and succeeded to be better. And that's probably because I'm an ex-management consultant. So you have to keep improving. And this new venture of working with speakers is incredibly rewarding, but it's also challenging because it's taking me totally out of my comfort zone. And it's making me really go deep to analyze what it is that I know that's sort of in there, but how do I get it out and explain it to somebody? And I am loving every second. It's like I've gone back 20 years in terms of energy.
But it must be great because when as an agent or a bureau, you deal with a client, the gig gets booked, you do the deal, the contract gets signed, you get some feedback from the client afterwards. But you're never kind of fully in such a way. You just feel like you're in one part of the process. But what must be great working with many of these speakers like you do is you're getting to see those transitions that they're going through in their own speaking career, like going from in person to virtual, going from just speaking in one country to starting to speak internationally, for example. So that must be really satisfying.
It's so rewarding, and that's the bit that's wonderful in that, you might take a speaker through something, take them through the process, say, have a go at this, and then maybe a month later they'll come back and say, oh my goodness, I tried it and it worked, or that one thing you said, I did it and I added such and such to the bottom line and I'm much busier and much more successful. And it's just, I can't tell you how rewarding that is. And of course, they want to share that joy and that success with you. And you're absolutely right with regards to the clients, the corporate clients. Many of them are doing bringing the speakers in, the experts in as an add-on. It's not their full-time job. So they're having to fit it in and around. They haven't got time to do much more with you. Those that have got time, you can build incredible relationships with, and they bring you in early and you can be part of that journey. So there's very different types of relationships. But with speakers, they do tend to want to give you feedback and they do keep communicating with you. It is a different relationship. So yes, I'm loving it.
I wonder I don't know if you find this is one of the slightly frustrating things. So we both work with speakers and we both coach speakers in different ways. And so we're getting our feedback. We're hearing from our clients, and they're telling those speakers and they're telling us those successes they're having. And because the client, the relationship, is a confidentiality. So you as the coach can't say anything publicly about those successes. And I'm often finding I'm trying to get them to come forward and say, celebrate, tell the world about these successes, because you're doing something really amazing there. You've just like doubled your speaking fee, or you've just made this transition, this pirouette you were saying there, into a completely new world, and it's just like going, you've got loads and loads of bookings. I don't know if you find this, but sometimes I'm trying to like push them to like tell their stories, because they're some of them kind of sit a little bit back. And I don't know whether that's maybe a little bit of a British thing for some of the British speakers that I know we coach as well. But I also find that also with American speakers who are usually a little bit more open in promoting themselves. Do you find that?
Do you know, I'm not sure if it's a nationality thing or not. There are different people who are very different in terms of how they talk about their successes, and some people are really uncomfortable with it, very uncomfortable with it. And it is difficult, especially if you're doing it on social media. So you don't want to come across as arrogant or showing off. There is that little bit, that is that thing. But I think if you're talking about the success that your client has had, I think it's different. So if a speaker is talking about the success a client has had, as opposed to, I did a great presentation, or I did this great thing, or, this client instead has done that, I think that's an easier thing. But yeah, it can be difficult. But yeah, I just want to celebrate some successes because we've had so much negativity, haven't we?
But that's great. I mean, on this topic of reinvention, if someone that's watching this just now on LinkedIn or YouTube, who is not necessarily a professional speaker, you may be an executive at a Fortune 500 company. I think there's still value in working with someone like Maria, for example, because we're all having to build our own brands within organizations. They're building these personal brands. So you, as that individual employee, that executive of that organization, if you can get onto more of those stages, be more of that thought leader, write those books, keynote at those conferences, it increases your value in your market. Whether you want to use that for influencing more people in your organization, for getting a pay raise, or for just a just-in-case plan, in case the business decides to reduce their headcount, and you've always got options that way as well. So for anyone watching this just now who's not necessarily a professional speaker, maybe has speaking as part of their portfolio of kind of what they do, it's still very useful to find someone like Maria to work with.
It's very generous of you, James. Thank you so much. And actually, it is really important for people to share their message, especially to give value to other people. There's a lot of noise out there, and the speakers that I like, the experts that I like, are the ones that are giving real value. Valuable content, and it's hard to find, but when you do find it, you absorb everything of it because it's so good.
I was blown away the other day. I was doing a conference. I wasn't the speaker. I wasn't the keynote speaker. I was actually emceeing the conference. It was about a month ago, and there was a speaker on it who was not a professional speaker. There was one professional speaker, and then there was more kind of internal type speakers, and this internal speaker blew everyone else away, frankly. Just because the quality of their message, the clarity in which they communicated, the way, the ease that they obviously enjoyed communicating that way as well. And I just kind of like, that person should be a professional speaker. And I need to kind of reach out to them at some point, because sometimes you, as a speaker, as a paid professional speaker, you go onto stage and sometimes you're sharing stages with obviously internal speakers, and speaking's not their main thing, so that's fine. But every so often you will see a speaker who will work for a company or work for a supplier, and I feel it's a responsibility of you as a speaker to go up to them sometimes and say, I think you should consider this as something that you do a little bit more than just a little thing on the side.
Yeah, I love that. I've seen a few of my clients who have spoken at events when I've gone and accompanied a speaker, and they've just been phenomenal. I've always gone and told them that you're just wow. And if ever you can do speaking and because obviously bureaus are only interested in speakers that you can earn a commission from. So if ever you can start charging, don't forget to let me know. So yeah, fantastic. Well, look, my goodness, look at us. Time's flown.
We haven't even talked about our tools of the week. So Maria,
I gave mine away.
Yeah,
I gave mine away. Mine is Reinvent Yourself. Really enjoying it. I particularly like, the sections on how important selling is, because you have to sell, otherwise you have no business. It's just so beautifully written. Really good read, and he's so honest, Gerald. He just lays it all bare. It's brilliant. What about you?
Well, mine actually is a tool I haven't bought yet. I've got it on order, I think. And it's, as you know, I use these. This is a Rode Go microphone. It's a wireless microphone. I've got a lapel mic here, which goes into a little thingy-bob, which puts into the computer for the audio sound. But they've just released the Rode Go 2. Now, here's why the Rode Go 2 is cool. The Rode Go 2 will plug straight into your computer. It doesn't need any like fancy AV equipment. It will plug straight into your iPhone as well. So you can be doing your live streaming from your phone. And it has 2 transmitters, which means when you go and we start traveling again and start speaking to people again in person, you could be doing interviews like we're doing just now with someone there, and you give them one and you have one, and they all go into one transmitter, so you get one really clean sound. So it's called the Rode Go 2. It's about £200 or thereabouts, I think. But that's my investment that's going to be coming up. Hopefully I'll be receiving it soon. It's a really, really good thing to have. And it's the kind of thing where you could have, you can even mix it where you can have one on you on the stage, for example, and you can have one in the audience or the person that's coming to announce you before. So you get a really nice clean signal.
Oh, really cool. Love that. I shall look forward to seeing that. Brilliant. Well, listen, we've come to the end.
We have.
And it's gone so fast. Nice to have you back.
Nice to be back.
Yeah, are you back again next week, or are you abandoning me again?
No.
You're here next week.
No,
at the moment.
I've got speaking gigs, but thankfully they're all pre-recorded, so it's gonna be fun. We're gonna be together again, Maria.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, there's nothing left but to play out the music and say goodbye to everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you next week.